Okay, so I want to talk about the third art and design challenge on the Quarantine Art Series. 15 things we can't do, or 14 or 20 or whatever. I'm certainly not going to do it because that would be 50, and that's way too many. Um, so I want to phrase this by, I kind of developed a process for you to follow, but I'm going to challenge us to do something um, that I like to do, which is when we think of things we can't do, then what does that thought process help us understand and uncover things that we didn't think we could do or that we discovered that surprised us, right? I call those, I guess, these days, the silver lining cliche. So, whoops, I always forget these little Google slides like, oh, wait a minute, you're all in my way. Goodbye, there we go. Okay. Hey, get back here. Um, there we go, beautiful. Okay, so I'll try to minimize this. There we go. Beautiful. All right. So 15 things we cannot do. All right. So I kind of proposed a format here. We're certainly talking about life during COVID. And I would think to not talk about life during COVID would be pretending that we're all somehow not living in this world that we are right now. So I felt as a teacher, it was actually really important to put it out there that we are all going through a time where we are facing extreme limitations. And so by using our art, it gives us a chance to kind of think about that in a couple of ways. Um, so I created, as you can see over here, the pre-COVID and the during COVID list. And so I suggested to start with on a piece of paper, use these two columns, and just thinking about a normal day pre-COVID, what would be the things you would be doing? Now, that could be 15 things, it could be however many things, doesn't matter. This is the brainstorming part of the project. But let's say you stick to 15 things. I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I took the bus, I went to school, I went skateboarding with my friends after school, I went to the mall with my mom, I went out for dinner, like whatever the things are, that just might be part of your normal thing, hanging out with friends or whatever it is. And you make your list of what you would normally do. And now, on the other side of the line during COVID, what has changed? What does your normal day look like now, especially 73 days in? What does life look like? I hope you're still brushing your teeth. That would be a really good thing. Um, but as you go into it, things like, where are you seeing maybe the biggest impacts in your life? Is it the not being able to go out with your friends? Or are you finding, for example, because you have to spend so much time online for school or through doing distance learning, that you're sick of being online in devices? Has your social media usage went down, or is it going up? So think about, like, this is sort of where we're charting our behaviors and our happenings. And then we're going to move into the second part of this, which is why I thought it would be worth doing a little video on this. So now, once we look at these lists, we're going to begin a mapping process. I'm just going to show you these two examples, and then I'm going to go ahead and hook up my document camera and give you a visualization of how I would do it. So these are actually just examples that I found on the web that give you two different points of view, not about COVID, okay? But here's an example of an art map that's drawn by free association. And this becomes important for a couple of reasons, this exercise. Not only is it meaningful to us now, not only is it another way to create art based on things that are contemporary in our lives, but as we move into next year and begin getting more and more into digital art, we're going to be doing a lot of work around how do we tell stories through data, through maps, through illustrations that take a viewer inside the mind, inside the life, right? So we could look at two lists, but if you looked more creatively at something like this, like let's say in the middle here, it says solving global warming. Well, Well, what if one of the things on your list, as an example, was, Friday night steak dinner? Okay, sorry, anybody who's a vegetarian, but oh, I went to the supermarket, there's no steak. Okay, so now that has to do with a meat shortage. The meat shortage, what is that going to allow me to do? Well, maybe I'm going to eat less meat. Well, then maybe I'm going to plant an herb garden, or, so, one of the things that you can't do maybe is eat meat, but did that allow you to create something maybe you hadn't thought of before? Like in my family, for example, we created an herb garden, which is not something I normally do. And when I went to the store to try to find meat, it's hard to find, but I found a big beautiful chicken, roaster chicken. And so without even a recipe or anything, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to make like this glorious roasted chicken with these herbs from my herb garden. So I never would have done that before. That was like the tiniest hint of silver lining. Now, so you kind of get the idea here when you look at the free form nature of this. So before I move on, I'm going to ask just one or two of you, when you look at this, before even getting into exactly the nature of our project, when you look at this, tell me what it makes you think of and how you think you might be able to use kind of a free form map like this to think about telling your story, even if it's the 73-day story and not so much the 15 things. Would someone be kind enough to volunteer?
It kind of resembles the branches of a tree.
Yes, absolutely. Um, and so when you see that and you look at the content here, what does that make you think of?
Um,
And don't overthink this because you just nailed it, Kevin. If you look at the whole theme and purpose of this particular map, it looks like a tree. And what's the purpose of it? Look in the center.
sorry. The purpose is to explain about solving global warming. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but now let's look at, like, a tree has a lot of branches, and so there's a lot of offshoots here. So let's have someone else jump in. My beautiful little bubble map is covering up one sector of this, but I see a lot of different branches here coming off of it. So let me have another volunteer. Just choose one of the branches off of this and think about what it's saying, and how you see this potentially transforming something that could potentially be negative into something positive.
The global warming theme, like like the ozone layer's like almost at its healthiest it's been in years.
Mm,
And so I think that's probably a really good positive.
yes, yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's say, Zephy, for example, if you were looking at the 15 things you can't do, well, I can't, I can't go driving, or I can't go fly and see my aunt, or do as much traveling as I want to do. Well, one of the things that we're seeing out of that is, ironically, this very positive impact on the environment. Yes. So that's right. That's absolutely right. Um, okay, let's see. Just looking at this map before I move to the next one. How about another volunteer?
I have a question.
Yes.
What if you find more positives in the coronavirus for your daily life than you don't? Would you do all the negatives of coronavirus then? Would you do the opposite of, like, so we're doing the silver lining, right? Would we have to do the bad lining?
Well, you know, I love that question, Erica. It's really funny. And I'd be really curious, you know, if we all had a kind of a class conversation about that, because um, a lot of the reasons why I wanted to do this is your map and your drawing. And if you're finding more things that when you sit down and you look at, in fact, this would be fascinating actually, you know, what's your pre-COVID map look like? And now what does your post-COVID map look like? And then, yeah, the 15 things you can't do have turned into the 100 things that it's allowed you to do. And what does that look like? That could be amazing. So, yeah, I mean, you know, really, this is your map. And it's funny that you say that, Erica, because as much, and I have to say, I really miss seeing you guys in person. But there's a lot of silver linings that have happened here for me as well, including I never used to get to see my own children. Now I do. That's kind of cool. You know, played a game with my son last night. You know, my other son has me in football camp. You know, it's like funny things that never would have happened. So those kind of surprises I think are really cool. So even if any of us are struggling, look for where you can find those things. And I think what we'll do is, well, it's up to you. We can decide whether or not we want to share these maps. Some of them may be highly personal, but some of them might be worth sharing just by the nature of how unique they are. Yeah. So, Erica, that's good. Does that answer your question? Does it give you
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So there was one more piece here in this picture that I was hoping someone was gonna catch on to. So I'm just going to see if we can take one more second. Let's look at this piece. And if anybody sees the one thing in here that it's a key word, I think that's really important right now. I'm wondering if anybody sees it. Anybody? All right, I'm gonna let you off the hook. So this particular example of this map, you'll notice that there's a lot of organic pieces around things that you can do. You know, you can take, you know, shut off your appliances or use a clothesline or cancel your junk mail or buy local and these kinds of things. But you'll notice at the top, there's a big offshoot that springs off that says be a catalyst. And this, I think, is actually kind of important because this is sort of getting at, I think, one of the things that's going to be an outgrowth of our experience, and particularly your experience as a generation. Your vote counts. You can talk, encourage your friends, find out about things, be strong, force yourself to do things you've never done. So if we were to just look at this little branch itself, learn more, you know, you could be, if I were to be specific, say to COVID, well, you know what? Like I'd be asking questions like, how did we get here? How did this happen? How did it get so out of hand? Or what's going on in our environment that is now creating these transmutations that certainly in my generation never saw, you know, and yet your generation, because of, you know, the real changes in environments, you all, and I say you all because my kids are in your generation too, are going to be faced with these things. So another kind of piece of a silver lining is sometimes when our backs are up against the wall and, you know, we're forced to look at the world in a new way, we use design as a way to reinvent. And part of that is then figuring out what's my role in that and how can I play a positive role, right? So you can take this assignment as sort of basic as your everyday, how do I cheer myself up? How do I get out of bed? How do I change my pajamas? You know, whatever it is, if that's where you're at. Or you can begin asking yourself bigger questions around, you know, how if I can take the 15 things I can't do and reinvent 15 things I will do, you know, to advance, you know, society or whatever it is, right? So let's take a look at this one. Now, I wanted to show you two very different examples. One is, as you saw, could be free drawn. To go back for a minute and just, you can see here, colored pencils, markers, paint, whatever art material you wanted to use on whatever surface you wanted to use, right? Completely up to you. Now, if you want to try really pushing some of your digital skills, this is an example of a direction in the design world where mapping and infographics become really, really important. And one of the themes here is how do we use symbols, icons, the idea of maps to tell a story. So let's say, for example, you know, Erica, let's take your example for a minute. What if I discovered more positives than not? Well, you know, maybe you're creating a kind of journey that is about the discovery of the things that happened along your way. Or Kevin, let's take your example. Because you've been kind of documenting and you're on the 73rd day, you know, what if you transformed yours into, this is a 73-day map and you know, here's where you started, here's where you are now. The thing that's beautiful about a map or a journey is it doesn't have to end. We're not there yet, but it becomes a thought process, right? And a kind of journey that we're traveling and noting things along the way. And there's no right and no wrong. Now, this becomes important. I'm showing you this exact example only because next year, as we get deeper into digital design, we will do a lot of work with building infographics and icons and icon languages to tell stories. So depending on what you're comfortable with, if you want to push your digital skills, I just wanted you to have the option that this could be a way to do that. Okay. So I put this because this is just my process, but I think we kind of already talked about this. You know, things I did before COVID, what were positives, what were things you miss out on, things that I now cannot do. Well, what are the things you now can't do, but you know, you could think about those. Or like me, do I really miss those things? Or is there a new way of being now that I can celebrate, right? So this is just yet another kind of thought process map. So depending on the kind of artist and designer you are, or your own thinking process, if it's helpful to you, you know, follow this sort of linear process. Let's see. This is just the same as before in terms of your criteria. I'll be looking at, you know, your creative use within your the parameters of the assignment, but noticing that within the parameters of the assignment, it's very, very broad. And really, you can pretty much create, you know, anything you want that delivers on the meaning of the message, which is this sort of idea of, you know, what I can't do, what I can do, and whether that's sad and hard, or whether that becomes positive and enlightening, or whether it becomes activist like, whatever that is for you. And then, of course, what's so important is being able to write up about that, the process and the idea, which is both really good for your own exercises, but then it helps me see inside the work, right? Make sense? Okay, so now